right. Woo! Okay, I'm excited for this show. There we go. Hello and welcome to HuddleCam HD Live. I am so excited today to be bringing yet another educational live stream. Today we're talking about balancing teaching with technology, and I have with me a very special guest that I'm excited to introduce. Hi, Christine.
Hi. Hi, Paul.
Christine is joining me. She is a professor from Rosemont College. And of course, my co-host, Julia, is here as well. Hi, Julia.
Hey, Paul. Hi, everyone.
So, Christine, do you want to give us a little background on your career as an educator in higher education here in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania at Rosemont College?
Sure, thanks. This is about my 29th year in higher education. And I spent 16 years, the first 10 years at a small liberal arts college in New York City, Wagner College. And then 15 years at a community college. And now my third college, which I adore, is Rosemont College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. We are a small liberal arts college. We have undergraduate programs, graduate programs. We're a small and very tightly knit community with the mission to strive for excellence, academic excellence, while pursuing joy in the process of learning.
And Christine, you've joined a few of our educational Zoom calls where we've been talking about this transformation of the education space in general. Obviously, the spring semester had a mid-semester transition from in-person classroom experience to a almost all digital learning environment. And you've been so kind to bring us kind of your personal journey from hybrid learning environments and highly flexible learning environments. So I'm excited to hear what your journey was like and where you're seeing the fall semester going as well with what you've learned from spring 2020. So this is your presentation. I will just move through this. And I guess we can start with an article that you wrote about your hybrid and flexible journeys through organizational behavior.
Sure, I'd like to tell you about that. So I didn't mention I teach business courses, and organizational behavior is the business course I teach every spring. And of course, on March 13th, it went from being a very traditional experience where, there were, I think, 17 students in the class. And we would all, show up to the classroom every Tuesday and Thursday at 1:00, stay there till 2:15, right? And all of our learning happened there. And then, of course, on March 13th, we didn't have that physical space classroom. We had a virtual classroom that none of us were really used to, and we had to quickly move into that situation. So we spent 8 weeks finishing out the semester, and on May 13th, I read an article on Inside Higher Ed, which is an amazing publication that covers just everything going on in higher ed. And it caught my attention because there was this term they used, high flex. So I remember reading the article thinking, so that sounds like what I was doing, but I didn't know there was like a name for it, right? And so I talked with a few of my students and I said, it feels like as we were moving through this class throughout quarantine, we were becoming more and more flexible. I, as the instructor, was becoming more and more flexible with how learning can happen in virtual environments. And things became a little bit more hybrid, right? Obviously, it wasn't one way or another. We had to fuse a few modalities. So I asked the students if they would be interested in writing an article together, and we did. And it was really a strong reflection piece for me And I realized just in the process of writing this I realized how much my own teaching had changed because of the pandemic, the quarantine.
I'm so excited to start talking about this because you're framing it in such kind of an evolving, world, which is advice I've heard from many educators, is being open to change and understanding that this is a process. You have some pictures here from Rosemont College in Bryn Mawr. It's a beautiful campus. Do you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, I decided to share those to give you a sense of where this journey started and this idea, like it's my personal thought that the spring 2020 semester for me as an instructor was a journey to being more hybrid and more flexible. And it starts on our beautiful campus, which is very traditional. I put a picture of a classroom because we don't do a ton of online courses for our traditional undergraduate students. We have adult accelerated programs and a great array of graduate degree programs, and many of those are online. Online learning or 7-week kind of hybrid modality. But for the traditional undergraduate college, and that's where I teach, it's mostly like just what you see there. We're walking around campus, we're going into the classroom together. And you can actually go to the next slide and you'll see my classroom. That's my classroom. I happen to have a photo of that because it's a new building, a brand new building with beautiful cameras in the rooms that I still haven't learned how to use. And someone was taking pictures of the new classrooms. So I happen to have that. This picture was taken weeks before we had any idea that we would no longer be there.
Yeah.
For the remainder of the semester.
What a transition. This is my favorite style of classroom, by the way, that U-shape kind of collaborative space. It's a very nice layout.
So I loved being in there. And I can tell you what was happening that very day. You can see some students were arriving, and I was sitting there at the front getting ready to greet the class and set up our learning activity for the day. And that's very much how I run my classes. I try not to lecture much. I try to have the students do activities. And so students will usually show up and they'll say something like, I wonder what we're doing today. And so you see those tables, like you mentioned, Paul, we broke out those tables, actually moved them around the room, and around each table was a small group of, let's say, 4 or 5 students, and they had a problem to solve, and each group needed to come up with an agreed upon solution to the same problem. And then we went ahead and shared the 5 or 6 solutions from each different group, and then the entire class needed to decide and agree to one solution. So this is an assignment that I love doing. It's got a ton of embedded learning objectives, and like you said, that layout of the room allows us to conduct this assignment in a nice way.
So now we're going to March 2020, and I can see that your classroom is now online. What application is this?
Canvas.
Canvas. Okay.
So that became my new classroom. And, many of us know that I think all colleges now have some type of learning management system, right? There's Canvas, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, which I think is D2L, Moodle. And they're all very good, really. We use Canvas, which I love. And I had been using that for all of my face-to-face courses. I wasn't teaching any online or hybrid courses. But the funny thing is, I thought, looking back now, I will admit this, I thought that I was like all hip with my Canvas usage. But really looking back, I wasn't at all all I did was put like the assignments up there, and the students would submit their work in there. But it took having to pivot to pure online learning for me to realize the true capability of the product, right?
Yeah.
So that was my Canvas classroom, yeah, in March 2020, just like weeks after that photo was taken. And I can't see it too well. What is that, the one that shows the steps, step 1, step 2, step 3?
Yes. So this is the one that says supply chain management. I think that the next one's coming up. Then you gave us a little note here about teaching and learning. And I think this is part of that evolution, that it kind of evolving, idea of what teaching is. You say that teaching is really facilitating learning. So you're creating an environment where students can interact with subject matter. And it's interesting because I have some questions for you on that in a digital online world, what that could look like. And then learning is acquiring new knowledge, skills, attitudes, and understanding in a way where one can make meaningful use of this new information or make meaning of this new information. So obviously in the classroom, I know you were a very hands-on teacher. You like to do activities, get people involved. Now we're kind of fishing for new technology tools and ways to do this online, trying to keep students engaged. I was showing some of the fun little toys and ideas that I have for students to, give feedback, maybe non-verbally on Zoom with thumbs up and thumbs down. But I've heard of a lot of great ideas for trying to create that environment where students can interact with subject matters. It's easier for some teachers than others. I was talking to a teacher last Monday who was teaching students about the stock market, and he was able to share his screen, and they were buying digital stocks and watching the stock market go up. And that translated really well to a online course because it was an online platform already. Do you have any stories on trying to transition some of these in-classroom activities to an online learning environment?
Actually, I do. I think I put some photos in this PowerPoint for you about exactly that. Let's keep going. Let's go back to that other slide for 1 second, though. I listed there the activities that I like to see happen for the students in the classroom. I see myself as being responsible to facilitate learning. And so the way, there's so many ways to do that. And lecturing is one way to provide the information, and all kinds of forms of assessment and evaluation. But like you say, I do like to have the students get their hands on the content and interact with it in very personal ways. And so I listed some of the ways that I like to have students interact. And one thing that I think is important is having students take risks and get out of their comfort zone. So when I'm facilitating learning, a learning environment or different projects, I know this might sound a little odd, but the project is usually one, if it's going to really produce some good learning, it's one where the students are going to be a little bit uncomfortable because they think it's complicated, and they don't even understand how to do it at first, right? So I think that's where I've seen, after the assignment is way over, students come back and feel so good about the way they were able to master something that was completely new to them. And so I have this one assignment that I had down, and that's the next photos. Right, and I actually happen to have some photos from April of 2019. So these were the same 2 courses that I was teaching this past spring semester. And I was also planning on doing these assignments this past April. But you can see there's nothing socially distant about those assignments, first of all. They are required that you sit very closely together around a table, cutting out pictures. Should I tell you a little bit about what the assignment is?
Sure.
This assignment is whatever we're learning in that class. We know that we're all different and everyone is kind of viewing that in a little bit of a unique way through their own lens. And so the students needed to show up that day with some type of tangible artifact of how they are viewing whatever this situation is that we were learning about. And so that could be, a photo, a quote, a story, a series of photos, tweets. They get very creative, but they bring something that represents their understanding of this. And then we put them out on a poster. And what we do is we aggregate all of the different perspectives to one topic. And then everyone needs to write a story about the aggregated, synthesized understanding of one thing, which helps because now if you walk away from that, you now have a very diverse perspective on one issue. And you understand where it's coming from because you spent time collaborating in the presence of other people, cutting things, laughing, joking, making decisions about how to explain these diverse perspectives. And actually, I asked the students to teach this to another audience. So you can see in that picture at the top, they're actually showing this body of knowledge to other individuals and explaining it. And the really cool thing is when they're explaining something that wasn't their own opinion or understanding. So this project, I had to figure out a way to make it work online. And I did. And I think the first slide that you have there is the first thing I felt I should do was really help the students. I mean, was that the one that's like March 22nd?
Yes.
So that was like 1 week into quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
And the students weren't 100% used to, getting the instructions for something in this method. And I was finding it difficult to set up a time for the Zoom calls. I mean, students had to go back home, right? And everyone's lives were so hectic. And even though we would normally meet at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, now that someone's back home, a lot might be happening in their home at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. They might have parents who were home. They might have younger siblings trying to take Zoom classes. And it just I felt it seemed unfair to, at that time, require everyone to be together on a call. So I really wanted this to be asynchronous, where they could interact with the content at a time where they could really focus on it. And so I came up with this, step one. There's a big storm here. I don't know if
Oh,
you
wow.
can
I just heard that. Yeah.
hear that. So step one, step two, step three. And then I guess I showed you some examples of the next screen is like 2 weeks on there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can see there's a lot of action verbs, I guess. Again, trying to not just have the students read something and then, take a quiz, but more or less, reflect, discuss, explain, watch a video, right? Post something, read. So trying to get them to engage in all different types of ways with the same content. And on the next slide, I think I was super surprised to see the good feedback that the students had. And I think I shared 3 student testimonials.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this was really just the post where I said, let's reflect on this process that we've gone through for the past 3 weeks in trying to understand diverse perspectives to an issue. And that this was, I think, the international marketing course. And I think I only shared 3, but I think I had about 16 students saying the same thing, that they really enjoyed the process of getting into small groups. And one thing I found interesting is that when I titled the assignment, I don't know if you noticed that on the last slide, I called it small group table talk. If you see that. See
Yeah.
that? And looking back, I think, wow, I wonder what made me say that. Like, we're not around a table, we're in a virtual classroom. And I think that was part of me that wanted to give the students this idea that we're still doing that same type of activity where we're a bunch of us sitting around a table just talking. And it really wasn't even until I put these slides together for you that I noticed that I called it a small group table talk. So I think even in the virtual environment, I was still trying to give them that sense of being in the physical classroom. And that's part of my own learning journey. And so the students said they liked going into these small groups. And I think I know why. It's because in a small group, you can really interact with people. You can really hear 3 other people, but it's very difficult to hear the opinions of 20 other people in the classroom. But if you're spending 20 minutes, 40 minutes in an asynchronous dialogue, or even some of them did set up their own Zoom calls, you can really digest and understand the information. So, just reflecting on all of this, I mean, that's kind of my story about how I was able to take that one assignment that was very physically grounded and make it virtual. And it was very successful.
I can see that, you're natural at understanding this new kind of paradigm shift for educators, which is, from an instructor to more of a guide and mentor. And I can see that you even put a slide here that the big idea is that the students are the ones using the technology in your teaching. So they're becoming a little bit more of their own, directors of their learning journey. You're providing them with the guidance and the tools and the mentorship, and obviously someone to go to each step of the way. But they're sort of driving, their own, educational journey, if you will.
And I didn't realize that until just a few weeks ago at the end, when the semester ended. So that was my big idea after reflecting on this journey, that it's really, when you had asked me to be with this group today to share about balancing teaching and technology, I started thinking, And then what I realized is that it's more figuring out ways to get my students to use technology to learn. And I did actually show another example of that. I'm not sure.
We have a quick question, Christine.
Oh, sure.
Wanted to know if you used Zoom rooms. I think Bob means breakout sessions. And how did you pick the students in the small groups? So did they sort of do that on their own time, or was that through the actual interface of Zoom?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that. So I never used Zoom rooms personally, though I want to learn how to do it. It's super fun for just, you're on this call and then suddenly with a click of a button, I don't know who I'll be in the Zoom room with. It might be 1 or 2 of you, and we'll talk about a topic and then we'll go back. And so I want to use that with my classes moving forward. And I've been in meetings that used it. But because all of this was happening so quickly after March 13th, I just really wanted to keep the information on Canvas in a way that the assignment could be meaningful and engaging. And I didn't find that Zoom calls were working during that 7-week period. Maybe that's because of quarantine. I mean, people's lives were hectic. People weren't ready for that. But I know a lot of other instructors at our college and at other colleges had great success with that. So some of my students, so here's how I set up the groups. I used the Canvas feature set up groups. So I click a button and I say put 5 people in a group, and I had 25 students in the class. And so Canvas decides, who should be in the groups together, which is neat. And the students like it too, because they never really know who they'll be in a group with. And they have told me that they really enjoy getting to know others. And we all know that if students were asked to put themselves in a group, they would go with their friends. And they enjoy when they're put in groups with people that they don't usually interact with. So some of the students told me they set up, once they knew the group that they were in, they set up a group chat on their iPhones, or they did a group me, right? You know what that app is? Group me, it's like a chat app. So one group used WhatsApp. And here's the funny thing. Their group discussions were graded. And I thought I made that really clear. I kept saying, this is a graded discussion. You must have the discussion in this discussion forum app in Canvas so that I can read, I can see who's contributing, and I can grade you based on your participation. So in a couple of groups did that, but a couple of groups on the due date, I'd see no discussion happening for like 5 days. And then suddenly there was this beautiful like statement artifact posted in the assignment box in Canvas. And so I wrote to the group and I said, well, how did you all come up with this? Well, you know, we had a group chat, or we did a Zoom call. We did a FaceTime, or they did a house party. Did you hear about that one?
Yeah.
House party. It's an app that you can easily for free download on your phone. And like, it's kind of just like this on your phone, you know, everyone can talk. So this was I said, next time, guys, do the discussion in the Canvas discussion forum so that I can grade it. Guess what? They didn't. It made me realize that the students really don't, it's just a little bit more clunky, I guess, to go on your computer and go in the discussion forum, and they just want to use their phones.
I see an integration coming, don't you, Paul?
Yes, I agree. And I've heard this from K through 12, and now we're hearing this in the higher education level, that everyone wants to use their phones. And it's surprising how productive, you know, today's digital native students are with their phones. They're creating videos with their phones, you know, they're posting materials, they're writing papers on their phones, they're using speech to text and writing, you know, comments with their phones. It really seems like the sky is the limit. And this is such a perfect example of what a lot of teachers are calling the blended learning environment. And Christine, I know you've read this book. This was a book I wanted to point out, The Online Teaching Survival Guide. It's a great manuscript for teachers looking at blended learning environments. And then Christine had quoted my book here, The Online Meeting Survival Guide, which does talk a lot about, which you can get totally for free on huddlecamhd.com. And it talks a lot about meeting productivity. And it's true that a lot of students are learning transferable skills that they can leverage in the real world, like problem solving, like communications, right? Small group communications, Christine. These are the tools that they're going to use in the real world. They're going to use Zoom. They're going to use WhatsApp. They're going to use their smartphones. So they're taking that research into their own hands. And I think it transfers nicely into, you know, the real world in many ways. So you're planning for the fall, Christine. And let me ask you about this thought bubble assignment.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Because I did say, ask me about it. Thanks. I love this assignment. It's one of those assignments that I had it down in terms of how we do it in the classroom. It's in management course, and it teaches you how to, it's role playing, and the students do a skit. They actually read a real, like, Business Week or Wall Street Journal article, and they become two of the stakeholders in that business story. They go to the front of the classroom and they perform a skit that they get graded on the script and making sure that they're using the terminology properly. But really, this is to teach empathy and emotional intelligence in negotiation and understanding in business communication, that the other person wants something and you want something. And how are you going to organize your communication so that you're speaking to what is in their mind and heart, not only what you want, right? Because that's effective communication. Which, by the way, Paul, let me just stop here and say that your book about online meetings is really so much more than about just using Zoom or Teams for meetings. It's so much content about for instructors at all levels of education, I think. I learned a ton more from your book about online communication than just using, Zoom. So thank you for that. But so back to communication and how you said in your book, Paul, that 93% of our communication is body language, right?
Yeah, it's nonverbal.
Nonverbal.
Hmm.
So I could not bring that assignment to life this past spring in the way I would have wanted to, but I've been thinking about it. And I realized the students, like, they posted a script, but we didn't get to see the way they were interacting with one another during this complex negotiation. So I think I'm going to have the students do a Zoom call together and record it and then post it. Because our fall courses are going to be hybrid. So there's only very little I'll be able to do in the classroom. And the other thing about this is that when the students are acting out their piece, they put a thought bubble behind them so that the rest of the class can see it, but their acting partner cannot see it. And it shows us what is that other person thinking, and how are you then changing what you're saying so that you can kind of guide your communication toward their concerns. So I need help figuring out how to pull this off. But the good news is I have like 2 more months.
Well, I can certainly help you. And we're working on an online course right now that's called Technology for Education. And I think we'll have some solutions for you. You and I were goofing around a little bit with the nonverbal communications of simply a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Now, it would be sad for a classroom of your colleagues to give you a thumbs down after you did a presentation like that. But there is a lot that you can do, even having people write down, a score from 1 to 10, or, there's other things on here like I have a question, right? Where you can kind of non-verbally without, maybe breaking the flow. Another thing that we've heard from a lot of teachers is that a lot of students don't want to put themselves out there on maybe a group Zoom call, and they're more comfortable doing like a one-on-one session or a smaller group environment. So I really like this. I have some ideas for you for kind of doing like a watch party. I love the idea of recording the conversation between the two and then having the group watch it together, as opposed to, yes, everyone could watch it on Canva, and then but then that group experience where there's like a chat room and everyone's watching it together, maybe even rewatching it together. So I have some ideas for you on that. So we're thinking about the fall, and you're providing a lot of great information. But again, you're more of a mentor at this point, I think, and a guide. And that seems to really apply very well in higher ed. I've talked to K through 12 teachers who are having an issue with when they're so hands-on in first grade, second grade, third grade. I feel like you have a good opportunity because you're dealing with more mature students who can understand the value of a mentor and a guide. And
that
then
slide,
mm-hmm.
that was when I thought I was being so technological, because I was showing students an online newspaper and YouTube videos. But really, my big light bulb is that what I had them do in the next slide, which is they have to go out and find the online newspaper. They have to go out and find the videos and post them. Because I think if it's going to be remote education, the students can't just be passively like taking in what we're putting out there. They've got to be using more active in the endeavor of figuring out the problems. So that's my big takeaway, is figuring out ways to have students co-create the content.
I love that.
Well, I loved it too, because really what they brought to the table, I would have never dreamed of some of the interesting perspectives they brought when they went out and brought the content in, rather than just me putting out there what I thought they should, learn.
There's a new tool that I'll share with you. And it's in my notes for our online course that we'll be hopefully releasing this week, if not next week. But you can actually share just a portion of a YouTube video with a student as well. Because, a lot of these videos are really long. So you could ask a student to just send the class or share with the class 1 minute inside of a video that reflects this piece of information. So there's really, and it was created for teachers to be able to give students, a more investigative way to share information. Now, here's some information on Twitter. So they're actually going out and finding this information on social media as well.
I can't even tell you how creative the students were when we called it Hot Topic News. So instead of me just, bringing you the events happening in the day that would relate to our course content, I asked them to go out and find it. And they brought Twitter, oh my gosh, there were things had never even seen before, like platforms that they would rely on for news, different social media platforms, TikTok, of course, and just various different ways of finding information. Like, this was an advertising course, so the students were saying, look, I saw on Twitter that McDonald's hired a new ad agency, or Beyonce is using some movie to do sponsorship and promote her new album. And then one student said something, I think I shared it on one of those slides. I loved what Ricky said. It's probably at the bottom of the next one. Oh, it was a few back. Maybe that one, the very bottom. I think Ricky said something like, I love how you tied your hot topic to the other ones from last week. And that was so powerful, because that's true learning. It's the synthesis of new information with old information and seeing how it all fits together. And I realized that this assignment was quite powerful. I also had them stop. They used to have to write reflections. And then I said, okay, instead of having to write 4 reflections, you can do one written, one has to be a podcast. And we found this really cool software called audacity.com, where you can make a free podcast. There's a bunch of different platforms for that. And then one has to be a short video, because short video is a very important medium right now. And then I told them the 4th reflection can be anything you like. It can be another podcast, another video, or a written reflection.
So you Googled remote education and you found the student and the educator, the information source, are not physically present together in the same classroom environment. Information is relayed via technology, discussion forums, online assessments, and video conferencing. And then you go on to say remote education is the student and the educator are not physically present together in the same classroom environment, but they are synchronously and asynchronously present together in a virtual classroom environment. And information is co-created by all class members via technology tools, discussion forums, online assessments, shared collaborative documents, podcasts, recorded videos, and video conferencing. I absolutely love this. And it's part of where we're trying to take our technology tools for educators course, is to not only teach educators how to be better content creators and creating virtual classroom environments, but it seems like you're actually challenging your own students to create content and deliver them to the class.
I guess so. I never thought of it that way. But yeah, I think I'm challenging them, which is, facilitating learning, right? Getting out of their comfort zone, challenging them to be really thoughtful and use technology and create part of what we're learning here for the good of the whole class, because it's not just the student and the professor, it's the students with the other students.
An interesting idea with this, I think, as this all evolves, is as you're collecting shared collaborative documents, videos recorded from video conferences, podcasts, maybe you could turn all of that into a week's worth of, let's watch everyone together into one video that's maybe curated by you as the mentor, which again is something. Our technology tools for online courses talks about all the different tools to put that together and think about it. So stay tuned for that, because I think what I'm hearing here is that doesn't that seem like a good idea?
Well, I think you're reminding me of a quote that I've heard so many times in life. It's like a teacher holds up the mirror for you so that to help you reflect. I can't think of it right now. It's, if I'm going to be teaching you, really, I'm holding up the mirror for you to see more clearly what you already know, what's really there. And I think that's what you're saying, Paul, as the person whose job it is, the teacher, to facilitate learning. I take all these beautiful artifacts that they put together, and then I create a video and hold it up for them to say, look what you all said. Look at what you're all thinking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you have a little bit more of a bird's eye view in this virtual classroom, if you will, where you're receiving these documents sporadically. You're giving them time to digest and learn and create on their own time, on their own schedule. And so they're all coming in. But I think that as the educator, it would be amazing for you to be able to encapsulate it all into one, more clear mirror, as you say, and then present it back for feedback, for more collaboration inside an online meeting. So I have some ideas for you on that as well. We're going to have to do a recap on some of this in the next couple months. So you gave us some cool ideas here, and it really comes from your experience as an educator. Be guided by what you know, but by what you want your students to know or experienced when they leave this class. Ask yourself, what experience can they have that will help them make meaning of what you're teaching? And then find the technology that will help the students have that experience. So there's a lot of technology tools out there, and you're trying to help other teachers kind of balance, again, teaching and technology. How do we determine which tools to use when? And it seems like a guiding force here is to let the students in this world, that they're living in, kind of have that, kind of almost find their own tools in the tool shed. And then you're giving them recommendations on how to sharpen them.
I love that
Christine has offered all of those different options because, studies have shown people learn differently. Some are auditory learners. So you have the podcast component, right? Some are visual learners like myself. So, the fact that today all of these technologies exist in ways to make learning and teaching experience engaging for all different types of learners.
That's a great point, Julia. Because it goes beyond just letting the students choose their own tools, but it's what resonates best with them as well.
Right. We have questions coming in, and
okay.
I wanted to know if there would be a Q&A at the end. So I would assume we'll have a few minutes for that. We're only at 2:42, so we're in good shape. Have you ever, Christine, started a project with giving all of the students an A in the beginning? And I'm pretty sure a lot of professors have done that. I think I know what Bob is saying with his question.
I have a statement about this in my syllabus, and it says, in this course, you earn the points. So it doesn't mean that if the assignment is worth 150 points, that I say you have the 150, but everything you do wrong, you'll lose points. I tell them, you have an assignment, you have the opportunity to earn 150 points, and here's exactly what you would need to produce to earn the 150 points. And it's up to you to produce something that aligns with the rubric. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of how I approach grading.
I hope that answers your question, Bob.
Are we allowed to come off of mute? Is that
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
Of course.
okay? Yeah, I guess the question, and it tied back to the project and the technology your students are using to record themselves, and getting that technology or that platform into Canvas. But really, it struck me that the students were getting graded on their content versus just doing the content. And it's kind of a bigger topic, but that was something. And I'll just kind of put out my questions here, and maybe spur some. I don't know how much time, but I don't have much more time. About making the connections in the small groups. That's really powerful, and that's what has failed, across the world with the engagement of the kids. And, Paul, really what you're doing is great. Christine, what you're doing is great, because there's the need is there, and trying to listen. And I'm involved with our school district's reopening, and I'm on the task force, and it's hot and heavy right now. And the biggest thing we have, the biggest problem is the student engagement, and how to make that from K to 12 and be able to get at that small group. And I think being able to utilize Zoom rooms or in that forum is really key, to allowing kids to make connections, or allow, teachers and trusted adults to make connections with these kids. And using technology to kind of ferret out what they're thinking, ferret out, their critical thinking, is the opportunity right now. So I guess as much as, I would love to talk on this topic, and really my biggest question is, Paul, I'll put it to you, is how do you see making the connections at the K to 6? Because that's really the biggest problem right now with going back is that elementary level, and how within your your book or what you guys are doing, are you addressing the issues of the elementary level?
Well, Bob, first of all, I want to say that your background looks amazing. If I was in the K through 6 level, that's exactly the type of virtual background I would use. So beautiful.
It's a collection of all the artwork. We start off with the COVID artwork, and I'm using a PT optic camera, obviously, to zoom in on these great pictures. This is the my rainbows and unicorn picture I can put my head on. So it's good stuff. But really, and that's another issue that we've had with students, is just the shame of their backgrounds. In the situations, and you guys touched on it. 1 o'clock, meetup time may not be a good time, and kids don't want to. They're ashamed. So how do you solve that? And there's great ways to do that. I love the paddles. I think that's a very ingenious idea of giving feedback. So.
Well,
I think the paddles are a great idea. And I'm sorry I was just going to say, I've taught as an adjunct on the college level, but I'm a parent of a child in elementary school. Something unique that they do every year at our children's school, they have like a silent auction. So one of the things that they auction off that the kids always want is to be teacher for the day. So what if there was a way that, you kind of pull names, and then, on every Friday or one day of the week, or however your district decides is the right thing to do, you have the option to be teacher of the day. And whether that is showing your pet, or kind of like, I want to give a tour of my backyard, I have a zip line, or whatever. There might be ways to engage kids that way. Or this is what I made my family for dinner last night, because I know a lot of younger kids were kind of jumping in and helping out making meals. So it might be sort of like some of the non-traditional learning, or maybe there's a way to incorporate math into baking and things like that. But that might just be an idea.
Yeah, I think that it really does come down to activities and mastering big group activities, small group activities. I almost think of it as a funnel. So, it can start at the online learning, learning management system, right? There's some type of level. Now at K through 6, that's way harder than high school and college level because you're dealing with much more mature folks who are invested and have the desire to learn, hopefully at that point. At K through 12, K through 6, it is difficult. And I do think one of the most important things is getting the parents on the teacher's side. I was talking to Drake Finney. He's a 4th grade teacher, and he said, a lot of the teachers joke about saying that education would be easy if the parents weren't always getting in the way. But when we go online and we're talking about distance learning, the parents are critical in being with that 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old to make sure that they're engaged. And it can be difficult to get the students to engage because if you think about it from their perspective, they're looking at 20 other people that looks like they're looking at them. So I do think that teachers need to be very tech savvy in a way to make it fun. Like Drake Finney, every Monday he does motivational Mondays, and he'll play, a motivational video from Muhammad Ali, for 5 minutes. So I think it's a combination of getting technically savvy, and I hate to say up to speed and up to the date with what kids who are 5, 6, 7, 8 have been watching on YouTube. I'm sorry, but that's kind of what we're competing against here when it comes to education. They're watching YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff.
It's TikTok, exactly. And there are some educational things out there. You can create content on TikTok. You really do have to get to their level. I thought TikTok was a big fat waste of time. And oh yeah, I'm sure it is in a lot of respects, but all my children are on it. And there are some interesting things out there. But, for people in our generation, we really do have to just take a step back and say, okay, let me see if I can figure this out. And we're
trying to do a whole online course for how to get up to speed with the tech savvy side of it and be a little bit more technologically, let's say impressive to students to play those video clips and things like that. But from a high level, I think it comes down to literally reinventing the way that you teach with media, using your smartphone, taking pictures, sharing little clips, creating content that is engaging for these students the way that they would see it on YouTube. If we really want to say that would be like the best thing ever, would be like, something like that. And then so you're reinventing the learning management system, right? And making engaging videos, things that they're very excited about. And then you're also providing structure. So I do think it's a good idea to have motivational Mondays. And like you said, Julia, a student is the teacher on Fridays, because what's been lost in all of this is the structure of Monday through Friday going to school. So I think that they do need structure. And what I've heard from a lot of teachers is that they love it when they have the motivational Mondays because they're like, I knew in this crazy world where everything that I knew of is gone now, I knew that on Mondays we were going to have a motivational Monday. So I think that bringing the structure back is a really good thing. If you can, and making it, and I have to reinvent, we're trying to reinvent ourselves as well. We used to do a one-way broadcast. Now we're doing a two-way broadcast with Zoom. I would think about those activities that translate to online. Some of the activities you're going to have to throw out the window. That does not work on a Zoom call, but which ones do? And remember that you can do the breakout rooms, you can do the small groups, because not every student is going to want to do the engaging and sharing in front of everyone, but they will in a one-to-one. So you can have those teacher hours, those faculty hours where they will come. And I've heard from teachers that say, it's surprising that, these people, it sounds like nobody's responding, right? No one's giving you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Maybe they don't even know how to use those tools that are inside of Zoom. But when you get them one-to-one, they're asking all these questions that they wouldn't ask in a group session. So don't forget about breaking them out into smaller groups, which is tough, at first grade, second grade, third grade. And I've seen, my kids have different teachers, and one of them's doing really well, and the other one, I wonder if she really cares. So it does take a caring individual who's willing to kind of reinvent what they used to do in class and be willing to throw away some of the old stuff that doesn't work and figure out the new stuff that will.
So Paul, agree with, the activities and breaking it down to a small group. And that's essential. And I've been Zooming for, 3+ years. I'm a very active Akimbo community member, Seth Godin, and his classes and teachings are phenomenal. And this is a hot topic right now. And I'm involved with a Monday morning meetup of the Akimbo community. And it is such a great, I look forward to it, but it kickstarts like Motivational Monday, how you're setting your week up, what you're going to do. So, but we use Zoom rooms and we go down to like 3 people, and the sharing that's done in that. And also you can call out, and Zoom has, I'm not doing a Zoom commercial, but the Zoom room capability, as you know, Paul, is just phenomenal, keeps getting better, of being able to shift people in and out. And that's an idea that has come up, is break these kids out into smaller groups. Teacher can come in, come out, and or you have other TAs or volunteer parents that are home anyway. It's like you said, the parents are so much more involved, and that's for a good thing. It's frustrating, but it's a good thing all around. So I got to go. It's a great conversation. I really appreciate everything everyone's doing, and everything at PTZ Optics and Paul and Julie, what you guys are doing. It's really a labor of love, and I'll certainly help out where I can in my little piece of the world. So I appreciate everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it's so great having folks jump on like that. And this is exactly what we wanted, really. So Christine, we still have a few more things here. And this is getting to really the high level. I love this, Christine. Ben Franklin says, tell me and I forget, show me I may remember, and involve me and I will learn. But it goes back even further, as you note here, Christine, that Confucius, ancient Chinese philosopher, says, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, and I do, and I understand. I just think that this is the most valuable thing that I think we can take away from here, is that we've got to do those activities. We've got to engage. Online meeting technology, people think it's for presentations, right? And even just saying something, but we've got to actively involve folks in learning. And I think that you've said that repeatedly throughout your presentation, but it's so true. So that's it. And Christine, it looks like you left your email here. I hope you don't mind that I just shared that.
Oh, no, that's great. Thanks.
Well, that's all the time we have today. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's
All
my
right,
pleasure.
Thank you.
I love talking about this stuff as a mom of 3, and I think we should always engage in learning. So thank you again for hosting, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.